Today I'd like to talk about some of the things that I wish that I'd known and some of the things that I'm glad that I knew when I started out in my magic practice. The first thing I wish I'd known is probably the most important, and that's why I'm putting it here at the beginning of the video so that if it's the only bit you've got patience to watch, you don't walk away empty-handed. I wish I'd known the difference between theurgy and thaumaturgy. The word theurgy gets thrown around quite a bit, so it's not impossible that you know it already. It's the process of bringing the lower self into harmony with the higher self, and eventually into a state of divine perfection. I mean, that's a goal, even though some people might argue that the goal can't be reached, and some people might argue that the goal can be reached. Either way, theurgy points us in that direction, sublimation of the self so that it is closer to being like the higher self. On the other hand, there's thaumaturgy, literally the performance of miracles. So a gross simplification of this is that while theurgy is about making the lower self get more in line with the higher self's will, thaumaturgy is the opposite. It's making the higher self do the lower self's will. This includes everything from necromancy, which is getting the spirits of dead people to get things done for you, to creating talismans to attract certain planetary influences that might be lacking in your life, to petitioning angels or demons, or both, to help you in your worldly endeavors. Ask a Thelemite or a Golden Dawn practitioner, ask a Vajrayana Buddhist or an Agori, ask a Chaos Magician or a Perennialist. Ask a practitioner of PGM sorcery, a trad witch or a medieval and Renaissance grimoire magician. And the purpose of magic, and therefore what it consists of, will be only barely related. And so it's vitally important to know what area of magic someone is interested in order to qualify their categorical declamations. Let me give you an example. One of my favorite grimoire specialists has famously said that while magic deals with spirits, it is not a form of spirituality. Naturally, what he's really talking about is not magic as a whole, but rather the particular area of magic that he is interested in. Namely, compelling non-material beings, by sorcerous means, to perform favorable actions for you. Now, if you've been following my videos, you'll know that I believe that modern Western magic was heavily influenced by Eastern Tantra philosophy and practice. And that path is about rejecting neither the higher spiritual realms nor the lower material realms, but rather embracing and finding the divine within both. I think that only a handful of modern-day magic influencers have that balance of both theurgy and thaumaturgy, but of course that doesn't mean that those who have chosen to specialize in one or the other camp should be dismissed. It's just that their brilliance in their areas of specialization shouldn't be confused with overall infallibility. And their lack of understanding in certain other areas shouldn't be confused with overall incompetence. In short, get your theurgy from theurgy specialists and your thaumaturgy from thaumaturgy specialists. And when specialists from either camp make claims that the opposite camp is worthless, just take that with a healthy pinch of salt. My second lesson that I wish that I'd learnt earlier is actually partly related to the first. It's the fact that while magic seems like a tiny niche, and that surely if there's so few practitioners, they must have found consensus at least in some areas, that's actually not the case. Anyone who's watching who's had more than a year or so of experience in the field will probably be smiling at this. Getting magic practitioners to agree on anything is like trying to get cats to do synchronized swimming. It's a cute idea that we won't even try to pretend exists in the realm of possibility. But this is where at least a base understanding of chaos magic theory and practice comes in handy. As in order to achieve the results of a particular ritual, it will be assumed that the practitioner will share the world model and theology of whoever designed that ritual. Just because, for example, you might subscribe to the Sethian Gnostic view that Tetragrammaton is the demiurge who entrapped humankind in the iron cage of the material world, doesn't mean that the medieval spell that invokes the four-letter name of God is actually a call to the demiurge. The creator of the spell had no notion of such a concept and therefore intended to call upon the monadic, Platonic origin of all things, of which all things are an emanation. So yes, lesson 2 is that in magic, more than in any other discipline I know, words mean different things to different people. And searching for the true meaning of a word can end up just being frustrating, as you'll slowly realize that you're the only one who used that word in that possibly originally intended way. Of course, this is an interesting lesson in itself on the nature of truth and objectivity. And that can also be frustrating because truth and objectivity are things that many people come to magical practice for in the first place. My third lesson that I'm glad that I knew earlier on is the fact that magic in general is an activity of the subtler parts of the human being. If it's engaging with spirits that you're focusing on, it's the subtler spiritual levels of you that are doing the work. With the aid of the physical body, sure, but nevertheless, it's parts of the self that we're not usually aware of by default that are doing the main work. If you're working on chakras, on the middle pillar, or doing any kind of energy work, if you're working with chaos magic sigils, if you're working with talismans or making malas, if you're evoking or invoking deities, if you're divining the will of the universe with a tarot deck or the I Ching or by poking holes in the sand, if you're defending yourself against magical attacks from physical or metaphysical beings, whatever magical practice you're involved in, it's the subtler layers of the self that have to be engaged. And this can be confusing at first, so my recommendation is to learn some of the essential techniques used by sorcerers of all varieties throughout the ages to sedate the physical self, put it to rest, if not completely to sleep, and awaken the subtler parts of the self, bring them to the forefront, as it is they who must do the work. Jan Fries's book Seidways is a brilliant primer that focuses on the practice of shaking and swaying and chanting. Do a little research on shamanic or shamanistic practices. Maybe read Heaven and Hell, Aldous Huxley's sequel to his more famous The Doors of Perception. Visit a Pentecostal church. Read up on brainwave frequencies. But one way or another, develop that ability to reach that trance state that allows the magical parts of you to take over before doing anything magical. My fourth lesson is that the right time for you to start emerging from the books and trying stuff out for real is a point that only you can determine. It's easy to get so bogged down with trying to learn everything before you do your first ritual that you forget that your first ritual is unlikely to have any noticeable effect at all, and so you'll have lots of experienced practitioners shouting at you right, left and center that you should get out of the couch and just get started. On the other hand, it's also easy to feel so certain of your impotency, like, how could this ever work? I'll just try it out and we'll see, kind of thing. That you end up bringing undesirable parasites into your life before having any idea of how to get rid of such entities, or even have any idea where you might begin to look for a solution if such a thing happened. In truth, the right time to start trying stuff out is when you feel comfortable trying stuff out. Don't let other people bully you with words like couch magician and so on. Obviously, you'll also want to know how to be humble during that time. Knowledge gained from books can't have the same heft as the knowledge you'll eventually gain from experience. Be that as it may, you are the master of your own practice, and the amount that is right to study before starting, in your particular case, can only be determined by you. My fifth lesson is one that I already knew, and I'm glad that I did. It's that the attitude of some people on the scene towards certain spiritual beliefs and religions are not necessarily representative and don't have to be emulated. Despite what some people might tell you, you don't have to ditch your religion in order to practice magic. You might have to push the boundaries of what you understand your religion to be, and you might end up with a version of your religion that's completely unrecognizable to outsiders, but what goes on between you and the deity or deities that you worship is really all that matters here. And as long as you know you're okay, other people's opinions are of no consequence. My 6th lesson is that magic isn't a lifestyle. A good practitioner can't be recognized from their attire, and the ones who dress the part, as it were, are not necessarily the ones that have the most useful insight to share. Jake Stratton Kent coined the term dark fluff, which I think is quite descriptive. It's supermarket Halloween paraphernalia mistaken for occultism, and it's rampant. So keep your wits about you and get wise to what the occult is and what is just angsty teenage dross. And to help with that, there's lesson number 7, which is short and simple. Subscribe to and religiously follow Alex Eth's podcast Glitch Bottle. Links are in the description. He's a real deal practitioner himself, and that's given him an eye for who might be a genuinely interesting guest, and what kind of questions to ask them that will prompt the most enlightening responses possible to the listeners. If you want to hear about the experiences of proper, accomplished practitioners, how they think, what they say, what they do, and what they care about, in other words, if you want beautiful examples of the real deal so that you can then work out what isn't the real deal, his show is the place. It's nothing short of incredible. And no, Alex doesn't know that I'm including this in my video, but it's the truth, so it's here. My 8th lesson is that initiation into a group is going to be the right choice for some people, but a terrible choice for others. If you enjoy structure and a well-defined hierarchy, and a methodical approach to learning, in short, if you loved school, then joining a magical society will be a terrific way ahead for you. However, if you find it hard to force yourself to focus on something that someone else has told you to focus on, in other words, if you felt out of place at school and you only really started to learn once you'd left formal education institutions, then you'll find that formal education institutions focused on magic are really just more of the same. But the good news is that there is so much information out there nowadays in the form of books and courses that both members of a group and solo practitioners can really reach the same degree of accomplishment in their own time and in their preferred way. A student who's found their own way to finding favor with, say, Hecate, will be no more nor less favored than a student who was formally introduced through an initiatory system. My 9th lesson is to learn some anchoring techniques early. Matt Oren gives some great methods in his latest book, Mastering Magic, which I can thoroughly recommend. If you spend all of your time up in your head, your life can quickly turn sour. Our brains rely on a healthy body to work well. Drink water, get some exercise. It's important for anyone, but doubly so for magic practitioners. My 10th lesson is to take the time and space to enjoy it. Magic can be a grueling constraint, or it can be a source of joy, and as likely as not you'll experience a little of both on your journey, as a true magic practitioner understands that both light and dark must be embraced in equal measure. But magic is a vast field, and if you find yourself in a situation where you've been following a rabbit hole for some time, and that despite your best efforts, it's still bringing you no rewards, no growth, and most importantly, no joy, then it really is perfectly okay to go explore another corner of the field. You'll always get better and more sustainable results if you enjoy what you do. And there are enough styles, flavors, ideologies, and traditions out there for even you to find something that suits your preferences. There we are, 10 lessons which I hope you'll benefit from as much as I did. If there are any tips that seem confusing, or if you'd like to add any tips of your own, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments section of this video. Or if you'd wish to speak to me personally, there are links down in the description you can click on that will lead you straight to my bookings page. I do general consultations and I do tarot readings too, so definitely check that out. Let me take a moment to thank all of the Foolish Fish members, both from YouTube memberships and from Patreon, for your incredible support. As you see, the channel is entirely sponsored by you, the viewers, and I really appreciate every single one of you who's taken the incredibly generous step of signing up to throw a couple of dollars and sometimes even more in my direction. It makes this whole thing sustainable, and I'm so deeply grateful for it. I want to thank in particular the Level Infinity Lux Aeterna members, Caitlin Kopok, David Venturini, and Amun. and also the level 3 Magister Venerabilis members, whose names you can see scrolling up on the left over there. Thank you all so much. Please remember to click on the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video, as well as on the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And of course, if you click the little bell button next to the subscribe button, that just ensures you get to see my videos on your YouTube homepage whenever I release a new video. Look after yourselves. Thank you for watching. Look after yourselves and each other, and see you very soon with another video.